Do you remember when a sandwich wasn't just lunch, but a small moment of comfort between two slices of bread? Back then, the fillings were humble: cold meat, leftover roast, maybe a smear of mustard. But somehow they tasted like home. These were the sandwiches packed into lunch pails, wrapped in wax paper, waiting patiently for recess or a break at work. Today, we're bringing back 30 sandwich recipes seniors grew up with, the kind that turn a simple bite into a memory. Lard sandwich, Great Depression staple, shocking now but life-saving then. During the Great Depression, few foods symbolized survival more than the humble lard sandwich. To modernize, the thought of spreading pure pork fat on bread might seem outrageous, even decadent in a strange way. But in the 1930s, it was a lifeline for families scraping by on next to nothing. Imagine a farmhouse kitchen with a single loaf of homemade bread cooling on the counter and a tin of rendered lard sitting nearby. Butter was expensive and scarce, meat even rarer, so lard, a byproduct of butchering hogs, became the fat of choice for everything from frying to baking to slathering straight on bread. The sandwich itself was as plain as it sounds: thick slices of soft white bread, or whatever stale loaf was left over, generously spread with creamy lard. If the household was lucky, there might be a dusting of salt for savory flavor, or even a pinch of sugar for a treat. Children especially loved the sugared version, not realizing at the time that it was less about indulgence and more about stretching every calorie possible. For farm families and laborers alike, this was fast fuel: simple, portable, and packed with energy to keep working through long days. Today, the lard sandwich sits in a strange cultural limbo. We cringe at the thought of eating it, raised on decades of warnings about saturated fat. Yet artisan chefs have quietly revived lard for its flavor and old-fashioned authenticity. It's even being praised by some as more natural than processed shortenings or margarine. Would people ever eat lard sandwiches again? Probably not, but their story deserves remembering. They remind us of a time when thriftiness ruled the kitchen, and survival meant finding comfort in whatever you had on hand. For the families who lived it, a simple slice of bread and lard wasn't just food. It was hope spread thin but wide enough to keep everyone going. Ketchup sandwich, sweet, tangy, resourceful, kids' favorite treat in hard times. Few sandwiches capture the ingenuity of hard times quite like the ketchup sandwich. During the Great Depression, and even into the lean war years, ketchup was one of the cheapest condiments a family could keep in the pantry. It was sweet, tangy, and most importantly, plentiful when meat and butter were luxuries few could afford. To children, the sandwich felt like a treat: bright red, messy, and bursting with flavor compared to the plain bread and lard meals of the same era. Parents knew better. It was frugality disguised as fun. The preparation couldn't be simpler. Take 2 slices of bread, fresh if you were lucky, stale if you weren't, and spread or drizzle ketchup generously between them. Some families added a sprinkle of sugar to tame the acidity, or a pat of margarine if they had it. Others toasted the bread for texture, or, in rare indulgence, added a slice of cheese. At its heart, though, it was just bread and ketchup, a humble pairing that fed hungry stomachs when the pantry shelves were nearly bare. Ketchup sandwiches became especially popular with children, partly because ketchup itself was marketed as wholesome and nutritious. Tomatoes count as vegetables, after all. For kids, the vibrant red filling felt cheerful, something to look forward to in lunch pails wrapped in wax paper. Adults ate them too, though more quietly, aware that this was a meal born of necessity rather than choice. Today, the ketchup sandwich lives mostly in family stories, the kind told with a mix of embarrassment and fondness. Modern palates may balk at the idea, yet ketchup remains one of America's favorite condiments, still slathered on everything from burgers to scrambled eggs. In a way, the ketchup sandwich is a testament to resourcefulness, proof that even in the toughest times, families found a way to turn a simple bottle of sauce and a loaf of bread into something comforting. It might not be glamorous, but for those who grew up with it, that sweet, tangy bite tasted like survival and sometimes even joy. Onion sandwich, fresh onions plus bread, cheap and pungent schoolyard lunch. There was a time when opening a school lunchbox meant being greeted by the sharp, unmistakable scent of raw onion. For children growing up in the Great Depression and through the 1940s, the onion sandwich was a common sight and smell in cafeterias and farm fields alike. It was a meal born from necessity, as humble as they come. Thick slices of white or homemade bread, a generous layer of butter or lard if the family could spare it, and rings of raw onion laid flat in between. Sometimes salt was added for a little extra flavor, and that was it. Cheap, filling, and enough to carry a child through a long day of chores or schoolwork. For many families, onions were one of the few reliable crops they could grow in backyard gardens or buy cheaply at local markets. Unlike meat or cheese, onions stored well and added bold flavor to otherwise plain meals. The strong bite of raw onion paired with soft bread created a surprising balance, pungent but satisfying. Kids might have wrinkled their noses at first, especially when trading lunches with friends, but hunger has a way of making simple foods taste extraordinary. The onion sandwich also reflected the resourcefulness of the time. When butter was scarce, lard or even bacon drippings stood in, turning the sandwich into something heartier. Toasting the bread transformed it into a quick, hot lunch. In rural areas, this sandwich wasn't just for kids. Field workers packed them too, appreciating their portability and the way onions seem to wake up tired taste buds. Today, the onion sandwich sounds almost shocking. A relic of frugality in an era of artisan breads and fancy spreads. Yet modern food trends, with their love of bold flavors and rustic simplicity, have unintentionally circled back to similar ideas. Caramelized onion jams and onion-heavy focaccias are celebrated now, though few realize their roots trace back to those plain lunches of survival. For those who lived through it, the memory of biting into crisp onion between soft bread lingers, sharp, tear-inducing, and oddly comforting all at once. Sugar sandwich, a treat for kids when jam was too pricey. In the days when every penny mattered, the sugar sandwich was a rare indulgence that cost next to nothing but felt like a feast to children. At first glance, the idea seems almost scandalous. 2 slices of bread, spread with butter or lard, and sprinkled with granulated sugar until it glistened. Yet during the Great Depression and even into the rationing years of World War II, this humble creation stood in for more expensive sweets like jam, honey, or chocolate. It was fast, affordable, and for many families, one of the few ways to make a child's face light up during hard times. The preparation was laughably simple. Mothers, or sometimes older siblings, would spread whatever fat they had on hand, some butter if they were lucky, margarine if they weren't, across fresh bread or yesterday's loaf, revived with a quick toast. A shake of white sugar followed, sometimes brown sugar if that was available, and the sandwich was folded in half to avoid sticky fingers. The result was soft, sweet, and slightly gritty between the teeth, a texture and flavor combination etched into memory for anyone who grew up eating them. For children, the sugar sandwich wasn't just about sweetness. It was about feeling cared for. In a time when birthday cakes were rare and candy was a luxury, this simple treat transformed an ordinary afternoon into something special. Parents may have worried about waste and rationing, but they also knew the value of morale, especially for little ones who sense the weight of adult worries. Today, the sugar sandwich lives mostly in nostalgic conversations, half-jokingly recalled by grandparents who swear, "You haven't lived until you've had one." While modern diets shudder at the thought, its essence, turning the simplest pantry staples into comfort food, remains timeless. It's a reminder of how families once found sweetness in scarcity, proof that joy could be conjured from little more than bread, fat, and sugar shaken from a tin. Fried potato sandwich. Leftover potatoes turned into hearty lunch filler. In kitchens where nothing went to waste, leftover potatoes were never tossed out. They were reborn the next day as the heart of a fried potato sandwich. During the lean years of the Great Depression and well into the 1940s, potatoes were a reliable staple, cheap, filling, and endlessly adaptable. When boiled or roasted spuds from supper sat waiting in the icebox, thrifty mothers transformed them into something entirely new by slicing and frying them until golden and crisp, then tucking them between slices of bread for a quick, satisfying meal. The appeal was more than just frugality. Fried potatoes carried a certain rustic comfort, the crackle of them hitting hot fat in a cast iron skillet, the earthy aroma filling the kitchen. Once crisped, they were layered onto soft bread, often buttered or slicked with drippings and seasoned with nothing more than salt and pepper. For those who had a garden, an onion might be fried alongside the potatoes for extra flavor. Some families even mashed the leftovers, forming rough patties before frying, which made the sandwich easier to eat on the go. Children loved them because they tasted indulgent, especially when compared to the plain lard or sugar sandwiches that also filled lunch boxes at the time. For working men and women, these sandwiches were portable fuel, cheap enough to pack by the dozen, hearty enough to keep hunger away during long days in fields or factories. They also carried a sense of ingenuity, a quiet satisfaction in turning yesterday's scraps into something worth savoring. Today, the fried potato sandwich feels almost decadent in its simplicity, echoing modern comfort food trends like hash brown breakfast sandwiches or loaded fry melts. Yet the spirit behind it remains the same. Take what you have, make it delicious, and waste nothing. For families who grew up with them, the memory is vivid. Warm bread, crispy edges, and the faint sizzle still ringing in their ears. Proof that some of the best meals are born not from abundance, but from making do. Cucumber and vinegar sandwich. Crisp garden bounty meets vinegar tang. There was a time when summer gardens overflowed with cucumbers, their cool green crunch becoming the centerpiece of countless humble meals. For families scraping through the Great Depression and wartime rationing, the cucumber and vinegar sandwich was a bright spot, fresh, tangy, and almost luxurious compared to the heavier fare of potatoes and lard. It required no stove, no complicated ingredients, just slices of bread, garden cucumbers, a splash of vinegar, and a pinch of salt. It was a recipe born of abundance and thrift all at once, proof that simplicity could be deeply satisfying. Preparation was as straightforward as it was refreshing. Cucumbers were sliced thin, paper thin if someone had a steady hand or a well-loved mandolin, and briefly soaked or splashed with vinegar. Sometimes sugar was added to soften the tartness, sometimes not. The bread, usually soft white or homemade, was buttered to keep the vinegar from soaking through, then piled with the crisp, briny slices. For an extra touch, a sprinkle of salt or pepper finished it off. Eaten fresh, the sandwich was a cool relief on sweltering days, particularly for children coming in from farm chores or adults taking a break from factory work. This sandwich held a different kind of nostalgia than the fried or fatty staples of the era. It felt light, almost fancy, echoing tea sandwiches but without the pretension. Gardens were victory fields, every row planted with purpose. And biting into those cucumbers meant tasting the reward of hard work and patience. Today, cucumber and vinegar sandwiches feel surprisingly modern. Their clean, bright flavor wouldn't be out of place on a farm-to-table menu or in a picnic basket alongside sparkling water. Yet for those who grew up with them, they'll always taste like backyard summers and clinking mason jars, when a handful of cucumbers and a splash of vinegar were all it took to turn hardship into something hopeful, cool, and unmistakably homegrown. Carrot salad sandwich. Grated carrots with mayo or vinegar, ultra cheap filler. The carrot salad sandwich is one of those forgotten creations that perfectly captures the ingenuity of hard times. In the 1930s and 1940s, when families stretched every penny in every meal, carrots were a blessing, inexpensive, easy to grow in backyard gardens, and packed with enough natural sweetness to feel like a treat. Turning them into a sandwich filling required little more than a grater, a spoonful of mayonnaise or vinegar, and a willingness to make do. It was frugality at its finest, fresh, colorful, and surprisingly satisfying despite its humble origins. Preparation was almost ritualistic in its simplicity. A pile of carrots would be washed, peeled, and grated into fine shreds, their bright orange color instantly cheering up even the plainest loaf of bread. For creaminess, thrifty cooks stirred in a bit of mayonnaise, though in households where oil or eggs were scarce, vinegar or even a splash of pickle brine provided tang instead. A pinch of salt and sugar often balanced the flavors, creating a mixture that was both refreshing and filling. Spread thick between slices of soft bread, it became a portable meal. Light enough for children's lunchboxes, hearty enough to fuel adults through long days of work. Emotionally, the carrot salad sandwich carried more than just nutrition. It was a reminder of victory gardens and community canning, of mothers finding ways to keep meals cheerful despite rationing and worry. Children may not have realized it then, but those bright orange sandwiches represented a kind of hope, proof that even in the hardest years, there could still be color and sweetness on the table. Today, the concept feels oddly modern. Carrot slaw sandwiches appear in vegan cafes, and foodies praise the crunch of raw vegetables paired with tangy dressings. Yet few realize their roots lie in Depression-era kitchens, where ingenuity turned garden produce into comfort food. For those who remember, the taste is unforgettable, crisp, sweet, tangy, and wrapped in the soft familiarity of homemade bread. A simple pleasure born out of hardship and carried forward through memory. Egg and cress sandwich, Victory Garden greens, elevate rationed eggs. During the lean years of World War II, when ration books dictated every meal and butter, meat, and sugar were precious commodities, the egg and cress sandwich became a quiet hero of the lunch table. Eggs, though rationed, were still more attainable than meats, and cress, that peppery leafy green, could be grown in a windowsill jar or backyard victory garden. Together, they formed a pairing that felt fresh, nourishing, and surprisingly elegant for such austere times. It was proof that even in scarcity, ingenuity could turn the simplest ingredients into comfort. The preparation began with boiled eggs, often stretched as far as possible. One egg might be mashed with a fork and bulked out with a touch of mayonnaise or even just a drizzle of vinegar and a pinch of salt. Spread on soft bread, sometimes wholemeal, sometimes whatever was available, the filling gained its brightness from fresh cress, its peppery bite cutting through the richness of the egg. Some families added a dab of mustard for extra flavor, while others simply layered egg and greens and called it lunch. Wrapped in wax paper, it was tucked into lunch pails for school children and factory workers alike. Emotionally, the egg and cress sandwich symbolized resilience and self-reliance. Cress could sprout in a week from a handful of seeds, meaning even city dwellers without land could grow their own greens. Mothers and grandmothers took pride in those little jars of greenery on the windowsill, knowing that every sprig meant another wholesome meal without relying on scarce store goods. Today, the egg and cress sandwich feels timeless, even fashionable. Cafes proudly serve versions on artisanal bread, often with free-range eggs and microgreens, though the essence remains unchanged. For those who remember the wartime version, its flavor is tied to memories of thrift and gratitude, of making do and still finding joy in something fresh and homemade. It was more than just a sandwich. It was a small victory in every bite, a taste of hope in the midst of ration books and blackouts. Peanut butter and bacon dripping sandwich. Fat-saving ingenuity, protein-rich. In kitchens shaped by scarcity, nothing went to waste, not even the grease left behind from frying bacon. During the Great Depression and into World War II, when butter and meat were strictly rationed or simply unaffordable, cooks saved every drop of rendered fat in small tins or coffee cans. Enter the peanut butter and bacon drippings. Sandwich, a creation that sounds strange to modern ears, yet made perfect sense to families determined to stretch flavor and calories as far as they would go. The sandwich began with two humble staples. Peanut butter, cheap and shelf-stable, provided protein and a creamy base, while bacon drippings added smoky richness that transformed plain bread into something indulgent. Mothers would spread a thin layer of peanut butter onto soft or toasted bread, then drizzle or lightly smear the cooled drippings over it, sometimes solid, sometimes still a bit warm. The result was a savory, sweet combination that tasted far more luxurious than the sum of its parts. For children, it was a treat. For adults, it was efficient fuel for long workdays in fields or factories. What made this sandwich remarkable wasn't just its flavor, but its ingenuity. Every resource counted, and reusing bacon fat wasn't a matter of preference, but of survival. Drippings seasoned everything from cornbread to beans. And here, they elevated a simple peanut butter sandwich into something deeply satisfying. It was one of those quiet culinary tricks passed down through households, rarely written in cookbooks, yet remembered fondly decades later. Today, the idea of combining peanut butter with bacon fat might raise eyebrows, yet food trends celebrating sweet and salty flavors think bacon-topped donuts or peanut butter burgers, owe a quiet debt to this Depression-era pairing. For those who grew up with it, the memory lingers, the smoky aroma, the creamy, salty bite, the sense that even in hard times, a little creativity could turn scraps into comfort. It's a reminder that survival cuisine wasn't always grim. Sometimes it bordered on delicious. Spam and mustard sandwich, iconic Wabusu canned meat hero. Few foods are as closely tied to wartime memory as Spam. Introduced by Hormel in the late 1930s, this canned meat quickly became a staple during World War II, feeding soldiers on the front lines and families back home. Its long shelf life, affordability, and versatility made it a hero of the rationing era. While fresh meat was scarce and strictly rationed, Spam could sit in a pantry for months and be ready to slice at a moment's notice. No refrigeration required. Out of this convenience came countless quick meals, but one of the simplest and most enduring was the Spam and mustard sandwich. Making it required little more than a can opener and a frying pan, though frying was optional. Some families enjoyed their Spam sliced cold and straight from the can, while others preferred to pan fry it until the edges crisped and caramelized. A slice or two was laid between soft bread and a swipe of mustard, yellow, spicy brown, or whatever was available, cut through the richness of the meat. For many, that tangy contrast defined the sandwich, balancing salty pork with just enough bite to keep it from feeling heavy. This sandwich carried more than just flavor, it carried morale. Spam appeared in soldiers' field rations, found its way into care packages, and later returned with servicemen who brought their taste for it back home. Children of the 1940s and 1950s often remember Spam sandwiches as school lunch staples, wrapped in wax paper and tucked into brown bags. Today, Spam's reputation swings between nostalgia and novelty. It's celebrated in Hawaii and across Asia, embraced by modern chefs, and mocked in equal measure by those who never knew its history. Yet for those who lived through the war years, the Spam and mustard sandwich remains iconic, a symbol of resilience and practicality. One bite recalls crowded kitchen tables, ration books tucked in drawers, and the quiet triumph of turning a simple canned meat into a meal that felt, against all odds, satisfying. Fried bologna sandwich, pan-crisped, curled edges, slice of nostalgia. For many who grew up in the 1950s and 1960s, the fried bologna sandwich is pure comfort, a working-class classic that turned an inexpensive lunch meat into something worth savoring. Bologna itself was cheap, widely available, and versatile, making it a staple in lunch boxes and family refrigerators. But frying it? That was where the magic happened. A simple slice tossed in a hot skillet would curl at the edges like a little edible bowl, sizzling and browning in its own fat until transformed from rubbery to irresistible. The sandwich came together in minutes. Fried bologna was slipped onto white bread, often buttered or spread with mustard, sometimes both, and eaten hot, the edges still crackling. Some families added a slice of American cheese, letting it melt into the meat's salty folds, while others dressed it with pickles or a swipe of mayonnaise. However it was served, it was fast, filling, and in its own way indulgent. For kids, it felt special compared to the usual cold sandwiches. For parents, it was affordable and satisfying, a way to make a little feel like a lot. Culturally, fried bologna carried a kind of quiet pride. It was food you made when money was tight but spirit stayed high, when ingenuity turned humble ingredients into warm memories. The sound of bologna sizzling in a cast iron pan became a soundtrack to after-school snacks and quick suppers, often served with a glass of milk or sweet tea. Today, fried bologna sandwiches enjoy a nostalgic revival. They've appeared on diner menus and even upscale restaurants, sometimes elevated with artisanal bread or house-made mustards. Proof that comfort food never really disappears, it just evolves. For those who remember them from childhood, though, the best version is still the simplest. White bread, hot fried bologna, mustard, and the quiet satisfaction of biting into something as humble as it is unforgettable. Pimento cheese sandwich. Southern spread goes mainstream. There's a reason pimento cheese is often called the caviar of the South. Long before it became a trendy appetizer at modern cafes, this humble spread was a staple at church picnics, school lunches, and front porch suppers across the American South. By the 1950s, its popularity had spread beyond regional borders, finding its way into lunchboxes and tea sandwiches nationwide. What made it so beloved? It was cheap, creamy, and packed with flavor, proof that a few simple ingredients could create something greater than the sum of their parts. At its core, pimento cheese is a mixture of shredded cheddar, mayonnaise, and diced pimentos, the mild red peppers that gave the spread its signature sweetness and color. Some families added a pinch of paprika or a splash of vinegar for tang, while others stirred in cream cheese to make it extra rich. The mixture was slathered thickly between slices of soft white bread, often cut diagonally and wrapped in wax paper for school lunches. In the South, it was just as likely to show up at potlucks or in dainty finger sandwiches for bridal showers, a versatile dish that crossed class and occasion with ease. During lean times, pimento cheese was a thrifty solution. Cheese could be stretched with extra mayo or even mashed hard-boiled eggs, making it go further for large families. It required no cooking, kept well in the ice box, and felt more indulgent than its humble ingredients suggested. For children, it was comfort food. For adults, it was reliable, filling, and endlessly adaptable. Today, pimento cheese enjoys a well-deserved renaissance. Gourmet versions appear in burgers, on charcuterie boards, and at upscale barbecue joints. But for those who grew up with it, the most nostalgic version is still the simplest. Thick spread on pillowy white bread, edges slightly soft from sitting in a lunchbox all morning. One bite brings back the hum of cicadas, the clink of sweet tea glasses, and the easy charm of a summer afternoon when something so simple could taste like pure happiness. Tuna salad sandwich. Mayo heavy, sometimes with crushed potato chips. Few lunchbox staples are as enduring as the tuna salad sandwich, a mid-century marvel that turned an affordable pantry staple into something rich and filling. By the 1950s, canned tuna had become widely available and inexpensive, a far cry from the luxury it represented in earlier decades. Housewives embraced it as a quick solution for weekday lunches and picnic baskets alike, transforming those little tins of fish into creamy, satisfying sandwiches that fed families on a budget. The classic preparation was simple. Drain a can of tuna, flake it into a bowl, and drown it generously in mayonnaise. Depending on the household, there might be chopped celery for crunch, diced onion for bite, or a spoonful of sweet pickle relish for brightness. Some mothers added hard-boiled eggs to stretch the filling further. while others quietly folded in leftover bits of vegetables to make every penny count. Spread thick on soft white bread, it was comforting, familiar, and easy to assemble even on the busiest mornings. Children, however, knew the true secret to elevating a tuna sandwich: crushed potato chips. Sprinkled inside just before eating, the chips added salty crunch that turned a humble lunch into something downright exciting. It was the kind of trick whispered among schoolmates at the lunch table, a simple act of rebellion against the otherwise soft, mayo-heavy filling. Emotionally, tuna salad sandwiches carried a kind of quiet reassurance. They were a constant presence at church picnics, family road trips, and brown bag school lunches, bridging generations with their unfussy charm. Even during times of economic hardship, a can of tuna and a jar of mayo could conjure up a meal that felt more generous than it cost. Today, tuna salad remains a diner classic, though modern variations may swap mayo for Greek yogurt or add trendy mix-ins like sriracha. Still, for those who remember the original, nothing beats the simple version eaten on Wonder Bread, maybe with a handful of chips tucked inside. One bite, and suddenly you're back at the kitchen table, legs swinging, the world pausing for a sandwich that felt like home. Banana and mayo sandwich. Elvis-adjacent Southern comfort. At first glance, the banana and mayonnaise sandwich sounds like a culinary dare. Sweet fruit and tangy mayo. Yet, for generations of Southerners, this odd pairing wasn't a novelty, but pure comfort food, born of thrift and nurtured by tradition. In the mid-20th century, bananas were cheap and widely available. Mayonnaise was already a pantry staple, and white sandwich bread, soft, sweet, and endlessly forgiving, tied it all together. What emerged was a humble lunch that could be assembled in under a minute, yet lingered in memory for a lifetime. The preparation was as straightforward as it was polarizing. A ripe banana was sliced lengthwise or mashed lightly with a fork, then spread across pillowy bread, slathered with mayonnaise. Some families added a drizzle of honey, a sprinkle of sugar, or even a dusting of cinnamon, while others swore by nothing but fruit, mayo, and bread. The result was creamy and tangy, with a sweetness mellowed by the richness of the spread. A flavor combination that baffled outsiders but comforted those who grew up with it. Culturally, the sandwich sits at the crossroads of nostalgia and curiosity. It shares DNA with the more famous peanut butter, banana, and bacon sandwich popularized by Elvis Presley, yet predates it by decades. In rural Southern kitchens, where ingredients were limited and creativity was essential, this sandwich was quick fuel for farm work or after-school snacks. It also carried a certain charm, a treat you didn't need to wait for payday to enjoy. Today, the banana and mayo sandwich occupies a peculiar place in American food lore. It's half punchline, half treasured memory, the kind of recipe grandparents mention with a grin, while younger generations raise an eyebrow. Yet one bite, sweet banana meeting tangy mayo, soft bread yielding with each chew, explains its staying power. In a world of gourmet sandwiches and artisan spreads, it remains stubbornly, defiantly simple. A reminder that comfort doesn't need to make sense to taste like home. Deviled ham sandwich, canned meat spread, paprika zing. The deviled ham sandwich is one of those lunchbox legends that manages to straddle practicality and flavor with surprising ease. Born in the late 1800s and popularized well into the 20th century, deviled ham, most famously sold in the iconic paper-wrapped Underwood cans with the little red devil mascot, was a godsend for families navigating tight budgets and busy schedules. By the 1940s and 1950s, when wartime rationing and post-war frugality shaped American kitchens, this spicy, salty spread became a quick fix for school lunches, picnics, and late-night snacks. Deviled ham itself is essentially minced ham blended with seasonings, mustard, vinegar, salt, and just enough paprika or cayenne to earn its deviled name. Straight from the can, it was ready to eat. No cooking required, which made it perfect for parents scrambling to fill lunch pails before the morning rush. Spread generously between slices of soft white bread, it delivered a satisfying punch of flavor that stood out among blander sandwich options of the era. For extra bulk, some families stretched it with mayonnaise, diced pickles, or chopped hard-boiled eggs, tailoring it to whatever happened to be on hand. The flavor was bold for its time, smoky, tangy, and lightly spiced, with a creamy texture that clung to bread and crackers alike. Kids either loved it or eyed it suspiciously, but it endured because it was cheap, convenient, and frankly delicious. Deviled ham also had impressive shelf stability, making it a pantry standby long after fresh meats ran out, a vital feature during both the Great Depression and World War II. Today, deviled ham sandwiches carry a distinctly retro charm. They've largely vanished from modern lunchboxes but remain a nostalgic indulgence for those who grew up with that unmistakable Red Devil logo peeking from the cupboard. Revisited now, they're surprisingly flavorful, especially when paired with crusty bread or fresh greens. One bite brings back a taste of mid-century kitchens, modest, resourceful, and always ready to transform a humble can into a meal worth remembering. Grilled cheese with tomato soup. Dip, simple yet indulgent pairing. Few comfort foods evoke nostalgia quite like grilled cheese paired with tomato soup. While each is delightful on its own, together they form a duo greater than the sum of its parts. Crispy, gooey sandwich, meeting warm, tangy soup in one satisfying bite. This pairing rose to prominence in the 1940s and 1950s when processed cheese and canned tomato soup became household staples. In a post-war America craving convenience but still watching pennies, this combination provided a quick, filling meal that felt indulgent without straining the family budget. The grilled cheese itself was usually simple. Slices of white bread buttered generously, sandwiching processed American cheese or cheddar, then toasted in a skillet until golden and crisp. The cheese melted into silky ribbons, binding the bread into a salty, crunchy package that begged for dipping. Tomato soup, often from a can, simmered on the stove with milk or water until smooth and steaming. The soup's acidity balanced the richness of the sandwich, turning every dunk into a comforting burst of flavor. For children, this meal was synonymous with snow days and sick days, the kind of lunch a parent whipped up to soothe and satisfy. Adults loved it too, especially during lean times. Both ingredients were affordable, shelf-stable, and endlessly adaptable. Add a slice of ham, sprinkle in herbs, or spike the soup with cream, and suddenly the humble dish felt special. Even today, grilled cheese and tomato soup remains a timeless pairing. Modern foodies might experiment with sourdough bread, artisanal cheeses, or roasted tomato bisques, yet the essence remains unchanged. Warm, simple comfort. It's a dish that bridges generations, capable of quieting both hunger and heartache. One bite transports you back to childhood kitchens, where the aroma of butter sizzling on a hot pan and the sight of steam rising from a chipped bowl promised that, at least for lunch, everything would be okay. PB and pickle sandwich. Odd combo that secretly works. At first mention, the peanut butter and pickle sandwich sounds like the sort of culinary prank older siblings dare you to try. Yet for countless families in the 1930s through the 1960s, this oddball pairing wasn't a joke. It was a beloved staple, as common in some lunchboxes as peanut butter and jelly. The genius of it lies in its balance. Creamy, nutty peanut butter meets sharp, briny pickles, creating a salty, sweet harmony that sticks in the memory as much as it does to the roof of your mouth. This sandwich thrived in eras when frugality ruled the kitchen. Peanut butter was cheap, shelf-stable, and packed with protein, while pickles, often homemade from cucumbers grown in backyard gardens, added flavor and crunch without extra cost. Together, they required no refrigeration, no fancy condiments, and no cooking. Busy parents could throw one together in seconds, wrapping it in wax paper for school or work lunches. Some swore by dill pickles for their tang. Others preferred bread and butter pickles for a sweeter bite. A few adventurous souls added both. The flavor profile surprisingly makes perfect sense. The rich, slightly sweet peanut butter softens the vinegar snap of the pickle, while the crunch against the creamy spread keeps every bite interesting. Children who grew up with them often recall being teased for their weird sandwiches, only to watch friends convert after a single bite. It was the kind of lunch that felt personal, quirky, but comforting in its familiarity. Today, the PB and pickle sandwich lives in quiet nostalgia, occasionally rediscovered by curious food bloggers or adventurous chefs who marvel that Depression-era ingenuity nailed sweet, salty, tangy long before food trends did. For those who grew up eating them, one bite can conjure memories of brown paper lunch bags, summer picnics, and the joyful defiance of loving something others didn't understand. Strange? Maybe, but in its humble way, it works. Leftover meatloaf sandwich. Yesterday's dinner reborn. Few things capture mid-century home cooking like the leftover meatloaf sandwich. It was the quiet reward waiting in the fridge after Sunday's hearty supper. A second life for a dish already beloved at the dinner table. Meatloaf itself was a masterclass in thrift. Ground meat stretched with breadcrumbs, eggs, and whatever vegetables needed using up. But its true magic often appeared the next day, when thick, cold slices were tucked between bread for a quick and satisfying lunch. The preparation was blissfully simple. A slice of chilled meatloaf, firm enough to hold its shape, was layered onto soft white bread or toasted sandwich slices. Some families added ketchup or leftover gravy. Others spread on mayonnaise, mustard, or even a slice of cheese before frying the whole thing in a skillet until crisp. Hot or cold, it was a meal that could be assembled in minutes, perfect for school lunches, factory shifts, or picnics wrapped in wax paper. The sandwich carried with it the memory of last night's dinner. Familiar flavors, transformed just enough to feel new again. Emotionally, the leftover meatloaf sandwich embodies the heart of frugal American cooking. It wasn't flashy, but it was dependable, nourishing, and deeply personal. Every household had its own spin. Some spiced the loaf with onions and peppers, others glazed it with ketchup or tomato sauce, and a lucky few added bacon. No two meatloaf sandwiches tasted exactly alike, yet all shared the comfort of home-cooked tradition. Today, the meatloaf sandwich enjoys a quiet resurgence, appearing on diner menus and in nostalgic cookbooks. Modern versions may use sourdough, artisanal ketchup, or gourmet relishes, but the essence hasn't changed. It's still yesterday's dinner reborn, a testament to kitchen resourcefulness and the joy of leftovers done right. One bite, and you're back at the family table, reaching for the last slice before someone else claims it. Proof that some classics never truly leave us. Cream cheese and olive sandwich. Fancy feeling lunchbox upgrade. In the mid-20th century, few sandwiches felt as quietly elegant as the cream cheese and olive. While other fillings leaned rustic or thrifty, this one hinted at something a bit more refined. The kind of lunch a mother might proudly serve at a church social or tuck into a child's lunchbox as a special treat. Its magic was in the contrast. Smooth, tangy cream cheese blended with briny green olives, their sharp bite punctuated by the occasional crunch of pimento. For an era accustomed to mayonnaise-heavy spreads, it felt downright sophisticated. The preparation was both simple and adaptable. A block of cream cheese, softened on the counter, was beaten smooth with a splash of milk or a dollop of mayo to make it spreadable. Chopped green olives, often the pimento-stuffed variety straight from the jar, were folded in, along with a touch of their brine for extra zing. The mixture was slathered thickly onto soft white bread or, for an upscale twist, thin party slices trimmed into neat triangles. Families who could spare it sometimes added a sprinkle of chopped celery or onion for crunch, but most kept it simple. Cheese, olives, bread, done. Emotionally, the sandwich carried a subtle air of occasion. It appeared at bridge clubs, school events, and brown bag lunches alike, a bridge between everyday frugality and small indulgence. For children, the burst of salty olive against mild cream cheese was either love at first bite or instant suspicion, a flavor combination bold for its time. But for those who adored it, the sandwich became a quiet favorite, a sign that someone cared enough to make something a little different. Today, cream cheese and olive sandwiches survive mostly in nostalgic memory and retro cookbooks, though their flavors feel surprisingly modern in an era obsessed with salty sweet contrasts and briny spreads. One bite recalls afternoons of wax paper-wrapped lunches and polished church basements, where something as simple as olives and cream cheese could transform an ordinary sandwich into a moment of mid-century charm. Sloppy Joe sandwich. Sweet savory ground beef. Classic. Few sandwiches capture mid-century American comfort food quite like the Sloppy Joe. Born in lunch counters and home kitchens of the 1930s and 1940s, it turned inexpensive ground beef into a hearty meal that could stretch to feed a crowd. The magic lay in its sauce, sweet, tangy, and just messy enough to live up to its name. A mixture of ketchup or tomato sauce, sugar, vinegar, and a dash of spice, simmered until thick and spooned generously onto soft hamburger buns. It was a dish as practical as it was beloved, especially for busy families trying to make dinner both fast and filling. The process was as straightforward as it was satisfying. Ground beef was browned with onions, sometimes bulked out with chopped peppers, or even oats to make it go further. Once drained, the meat was mixed with a tomato-based sauce. Recipes varied wildly between households and simmered until it clung to the spoon in glossy, saucy heaps. The mixture was ladled onto soft buns, no frills required, though some families slipped in a slice of cheese or a few pickles to cut the sweetness. For children, sloppy joes were pure fun. The anticipation of that first messy bite, the sauce dripping onto plates or shirts, and the comforting familiarity of a meal that always tasted like home. For parents, it was weeknight salvation. Cheap ingredients, minimal prep, and guaranteed full bellies. The dish also carried a certain communal charm, appearing at school cafeterias, church suppers, and potlucks, where big pans of saucy beef fed dozens without complaint. Today, sloppy joes remain a nostalgic favorite, equally at home in diners and home kitchens. Modern versions might swap ground turkey, add smoky chipotle, or pile them on brioche buns, but the essence hasn't changed. One bite still conjures crowded kitchen tables, laughter over the inevitable mess, and the sweet, savory comfort of a sandwich that never pretended to be tidy. Only delicious. Egg salad sandwich. Picnic perfect, sprinkled with paprika. The egg salad sandwich has long been a quiet hero of American picnics, potlucks, and lunchboxes. Born out of thrift and simplicity, it transformed something as humble as boiled eggs into a creamy, comforting meal. By the 1940s and 1950s, when rationing and frugality shaped everyday cooking, egg salad offered protein without the expense of meat, and it became a staple of backyard lunches and church gatherings alike. Its appeal lay not just in economy, but in its soft texture and mild flavor, which made it a favorite for both children and adults. Making egg salad was a ritual in many homes. Eggs were boiled until firm, then mashed with a fork and blended with mayonnaise, mustard, and a dash of salt and pepper. Some families added chopped celery for crunch, a pinch of onion powder for depth, or even a splash of pickle juice for tang. The finishing touch? A sprinkle of paprika, which added both color and a whisper of smoky spice. Generously spread between slices of soft bread, often white or whole wheat, the mixture became an easy, portable sandwich, perfect for school lunches, factory breaks, or lazy summer afternoons. Emotionally, egg salad sandwiches carried a sense of quiet comfort. They were quick to prepare, yet felt homemade and thoughtful, equally welcome at a family picnic or tucked into a brown bag beside an apple. Children often remembered them as a special treat, especially when cut into neat triangles and wrapped in wax paper for outings. Adults appreciated them for their frugality and flexibility, as eggs were always easier to come by than cold cuts or canned meats. Today, egg salad still appears on diner menus and in retro cookbooks, though modern versions may feature fresh herbs, artisanal breads, or even avocado for creaminess. Yet the heart of the sandwich remains the same: simple ingredients, lovingly combined, offering nourishment and nostalgia in every bite. One taste, and it's easy to imagine checkered picnic blankets, wicker baskets, and the quiet joy of a meal that's as timeless as it is unpretentious. Cucumber tea sandwich, American style. Imitation of fancy English teas. Long before afternoon tea became a Pinterest-worthy trend, American homemakers in the early 20th century were already imitating the refined charm of English tea rituals, albeit with thriftier ingredients and simpler execution. The cucumber tea sandwich, beloved in English high society, found a new life on this side of the Atlantic, especially during the 1920s through the 1950s. Here, it straddled the line between aspirational and practical, a nod to elegance made with whatever bread and butter a family could manage. In its American form, the sandwich was far less delicate than its British counterpart. Instead of paper-thin slices of artisanal bread, homemakers used soft white or homemade loaves, sometimes crusts intact and sometimes trimmed for fancy occasions. The cucumbers were sliced thin, or as thin as a kitchen knife allowed, and lightly salted to draw out excess moisture. A spread of butter, or later cream cheese, kept the bread from sogging, and a dash of vinegar or pinch of dill added brightness. Some families even layered the cucumbers with mayonnaise, reflecting the American love for creamy dressings. This sandwich appeared everywhere from church socials to ladies' luncheons, often served on floral plates alongside coffee rather than fine china and Earl Grey. For children, it was a rare chance to feel fancy, especially if the sandwiches were cut into triangles or finger-sized strips. For adults, it offered a refreshing, inexpensive bite during warm months, cool, crisp, and pleasantly mild compared to heavier meat-based fare. Today, cucumber tea sandwiches retain their retro charm, reappearing at bridal showers, garden parties, and vintage-inspired picnics. Modern versions might use sourdough, fresh herbs, or flavored cream cheeses, but the spirit remains unchanged, a humble attempt at elegance that still manages to feel special. One bite, and you're transported to a sunlit table set with mismatched china, where thrift met aspiration, and a simple cucumber could masquerade as luxury. Ham salad sandwich, sweet pickle relish twist. The ham salad sandwich is one of those mid-century creations that perfectly illustrates how American home cooks transformed leftovers into something entirely new. After a Sunday dinner or holiday feast, any remaining ham rarely went to waste. Instead, it was chopped fine, mixed with pantry staples, and reborn as a creamy, tangy sandwich spread that became a fixture at picnics, church socials, and weekday lunchboxes. By the 1940s and 1950s, ham salad had cemented its place alongside egg and tuna salad as a dependable filling, thrifty, flavorful, and endlessly adaptable. The key to its distinctive flavor lay in the addition of sweet pickle relish. Chopped ham alone could be salty and heavy, but fold in mayonnaise, a little mustard, and that sugary, briny relish, and suddenly the mixture came alive. Some cooks added chopped, hard-boiled eggs or celery for texture, while others spiced it up with paprika or a dash of onion powder. The mixture was generous, spread thickly between slices of soft white bread or tucked into dinner rolls for parties. Packed into wax paper or a metal lunch pail, it became the sort of sandwich that made a long school day or factory shift feel just a little more bearable. Emotionally, ham salad sandwiches carried the comfort of thrift done right. They turned scraps into something special, proof that a bit of creativity could stretch a holiday roast well into the work week. For many, the taste is inseparable from family kitchens. The whir of a hand-crank meat grinder, the sharp tang of relish in the air, and the sight of neatly cut sandwich triangles on a chipped china plate. Today, ham salad survives in pockets of nostalgia, appearing in retro cookbooks and at Southern potlucks, where tradition still matters. Modern variations may use food processors and artisanal breads, but the essence remains unchanged. sweet, salty, tangy, and comforting. One bite still evokes crowded kitchens after Easter dinner or quiet summer picnics, a reminder that the best sandwiches are often born from yesterday's leftovers and tomorrow's ingenuity. Pork and apple chutney sandwich. Farmhouse fall flavors. The pork and apple chutney sandwich is a love letter to harvest season, when orchards are heavy with fruit and kitchens smell faintly of simmering spices. While apple and pork is an age-old pairing, dating back to colonial kitchens and hearty farmhouse suppers, the idea of tucking those flavors between slices of bread became especially popular in mid-century rural America. It was a practical way to repurpose leftover pork roasts from Sunday dinner, transforming them into something quick yet unexpectedly elegant for Monday's lunch. At its simplest, the sandwich began with tender slices of cold roast pork, layered thick on soft bread or crusty rolls. The magic came from the chutney, a homemade or jarred concoction of diced apples stewed with vinegar, sugar, and warming spices like cinnamon, cloves, and mustard seed. The chutney provided sweet tang and a hint of heat, balancing the savory richness of the meat. Some cooks spread a little butter or even sharp mustard on the bread for extra bite, while others embraced the chutney as the sole condiment, letting it shine against the pork's mild flavor. This sandwich carried the spirit of autumn on a farm, resourceful yet celebratory. It was packed for school lunches during apple picking season, served at church socials alongside cider, or enjoyed cold in the fields during harvest breaks. The combination of sweet and savory felt rustic but special, proof that even in frugal times, flavor and comfort could coexist. Today, the pork and apple chutney sandwich feels right at home in gastropubs and farmers markets, where chefs proudly pair heritage pork with artisanal chutneys. Yet its heart remains unchanged, a humble way to stretch leftovers while savoring the best of the season. One bite still evokes crisp air, wood smoke in the distance, and the quiet satisfaction of a meal that tastes like fall itself. Simple, comforting, and timeless. Turkey and cranberry sandwich, post-Thanksgiving tradition. The turkey and cranberry sandwich is perhaps the most celebrated leftover creation in American food history. Born from the abundance of Thanksgiving tables, it transforms holiday excess into something surprisingly humble. Soft bread, cradling tender slices of roast turkey, and a swipe of tart cranberry sauce. For many families, this sandwich is as eagerly anticipated as the feast itself, proof that the day after Thanksgiving can be just as delicious and far less formal. Its genius lies in simplicity. The turkey, often carved straight from the chilled remains of the holiday bird, is layered generously onto bread, white, whole wheat, or even a leftover dinner roll. A spread of cranberry sauce adds sweetness and tang, cutting through the turkey's richness and echoing the flavors of the feast. Some families keep it minimal, reveling in the pure pairing of meat and berries. Others take a more indulgent route, adding stuffing, gravy, or even a smear of mayonnaise for creaminess, effectively stacking the entire Thanksgiving meal between two slices of bread. Emotionally, the sandwich carries the warmth of the holiday without the ceremony. It's eaten in pajamas, perched at kitchen counters, or tucked into lunch boxes for the return to work or school. It marks the soft landing after the flurry of cooking and hosting, a quiet ritual of comfort and gratitude. For children, it often means sneaking one more taste of celebration, For adults, it's a reward for days spent preparing the feast. Today, the turkey and cranberry sandwich has transcended leftovers, appearing on cafe menus year-round as the holiday sandwich or Thanksgiving on a bun. Artisan versions might feature sourdough, homemade chutneys, or brie, but the essence remains, a nostalgic bite that bridges feast and frugality. One taste recalls crowded dining rooms, laughter echoing over pumpkin pie, and the cozy satisfaction of savoring a holiday that lingers long after the dishes are done. Peanut butter and marshmallow fluff, fluffernutter, sticky childhood bliss. The fluffernutter sandwich is pure childhood chaos pressed between two slices of bread, sweet, sticky, and unapologetically messy. Born in New England in the early 20th century, it rose to national fame mid-century when marshmallow fluff became a pantry staple, marketed alongside peanut butter as the ultimate quick lunch. For kids of the 1950s and 1960s, the combination of rich peanut butter and airy marshmallow spread felt indulgent, like dessert masquerading as a sandwich. Parents embraced it too, grateful for a treat that required no cooking and kept lunch boxes full on a dime. The construction was almost ceremonial. One slice of bread received a thick smear of peanut butter, creamy or chunky depending on household loyalties, while the other was slathered with marshmallow fluff, its glossy white peak sticking stubbornly to spoons and fingers alike. Press the slices together and, inevitably, the filling squished out the sides, demanding a finger swipe to clean up. Some families added sliced bananas for extra sweetness, or turned it into a grilled sandwich, letting the fluff melt into gooey ribbons. But the purists? They knew two ingredients were all you needed. Emotionally, the fluffernutter was childhood joy made edible. It was after-school snacks at grandma's, summer camp lunches, and the rare moment when treat and meal blurred into one. For many, it evokes the carefree days of swinging legs at kitchen tables and milk mustaches that followed every bite. It wasn't sophisticated, but it didn't need to be. That was the point. Today, the fluffernutter enjoys cult status. It's immortalized in state fairs, retro diners, and even New England tourism campaigns, celebrated as a regional icon. Food trends come and go, but one bite of peanut butter and marshmallow fluff still catapults you back to childhood. Sticky hands, smiling face, and all. Peanut butter and lettuce sandwich. Crunch plus protein, surprisingly refreshing. The peanut butter and lettuce sandwich is one of those Depression-era inventions that sounds improbable until you try it. At a glance, it feels like two worlds colliding, the creamy, nutty richness of peanut butter paired with the crisp, watery bite of lettuce. But in kitchens where ingredients were limited and every meal had to stretch, this unlikely duo became a practical, surprisingly refreshing lunch that nourished children and adults alike. Its origins lie in frugality. Peanut butter was cheap, shelf-stable, and packed with protein, while lettuce, often homegrown in backyard gardens, added bulk and crunch without costing a penny. Together, they created a sandwich that filled bellies and offered texture beyond the typical soft bread and spread routine. Parents discovered that even picky eaters who balked at leafy greens would happily crunch through lettuce if it was sandwiched under a layer of peanut butter. Preparation was straightforward. Spread peanut butter thickly on white or wheat bread. Lay down a leaf or two of iceberg or romaine and press it together. Some families added a drizzle of honey for sweetness. Others relied on the natural contrast. salty, savory peanut butter against cool, crisp lettuce. The sandwich packed well in lunch boxes, held up to summer heat, and didn't require refrigeration, which made it a go-to for picnics and farm lunches. Emotionally, this humble sandwich carries the memory of ingenuity and quiet comfort. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. A reminder that even during lean times, small touches like a cool crunch could make a meal feel special. For children of the 1930s through the 1960s, it's the taste of home. Lunch at the kitchen table, bare feet on linoleum floors, milk in jelly jars. Today, peanut butter and lettuce sandwiches occasionally resurface in nostalgic food circles, celebrated as a quirky yet enduring combination. One bite, and you understand why it lasted. Refreshing, filling, and oddly perfect. A relic of thrift that still surprises with its simple charm. The creamy richness of peanut butter meets the cool crunch of lettuce, creating a contrast that feels both wholesome and unexpected. It recalls a time when frugality sparked creativity, when lunchboxes were filled with whatever the pantry provided. Revisiting it now feels less like a novelty and more like rediscovering an honest, comforting taste from childhood kitchens. Velveeta and jelly sandwich. Sweet, savory, mid-century curiosity. The Velveeta and jelly sandwich might sound like the kind of experiment dreamed up during a midnight snack raid, but for many mid-century American households, it was a perfectly normal to even beloved lunch. It thrived in an era when processed cheese reigned supreme, and home cooks were unafraid to mix sweet and savory in surprising ways. Velveeta, with its mild flavor and melty texture, was affordable, shelf-stable, and endlessly versatile. Jelly added a cheerful pop of color and sugary contrast. Together, they created a sandwich that felt indulgent without costing more than a few cents. Making one was blissfully simple. Spread jelly, grape and strawberry were the usual suspects. On one slice of soft white bread, layer on slices of Velveeta, and top with another slice of bread. Some families preferred the cheese cold and firm, while others toasted the sandwich until the Velveeta softened slightly, letting the jelly turn warm and sticky. The flavor was a study in contrasts: creamy, salty cheese against bright, fruity sweetness. A combination that puzzled skeptics but delighted those who grew up with it. Culturally, this sandwich reflected the adventurous yet practical spirit of mid-century kitchens. Sweet, savory pairings were common. Think pineapple on ham or marshmallows on sweet potatoes. So Velveeta and jelly didn't feel nearly as strange then as it might now. It appeared in lunch boxes, after-school snacks, and even quick suppers when parents needed to stretch ingredients without complaints from the kids. Today, Velveeta and jelly sandwiches live mostly in nostalgia, rediscovered occasionally by food historians and curious home cooks chasing retro flavors. Modern palates might raise an eyebrow, but one bite can be unexpectedly charming. Soft bread, sweet jelly, and that familiar creamy cheese melting just so. It's a quirky reminder of a time when American kitchens celebrated resourcefulness, whimsy, and the simple joy of making do with what was on hand. Back then, creativity mattered more than convention, and lunch could be both sweet and savory without apology. Tasting it now feels like opening a time capsule of childhood lunches. Hot dog sandwich. Split dogs on bread. Cheap summer substitute for buns. The hot dog sandwich is the ultimate example of American kitchen improvisation. Proof that when the buns ran out, no one let it ruin the cookout. Instead of a trip to the store, resourceful parents simply split hot dogs lengthwise, fried or grilled them until sizzling, and tucked them between slices of everyday sandwich bread. It wasn't fancy, but it was fast, cheap, and perfect for feeding a crowd of hungry kids on a summer afternoon. This humble creation rose to prominence during the mid-20th century when backyard barbecues and quick weeknight dinners called for maximum convenience. Sandwich bread was always on hand, cheaper and more versatile than specialty buns, and splitting the hot dogs helped them cook quickly and stretch further. A few slices could feed more mouths, especially when paired with ketchup, mustard, or a smear of relish scavenged from the fridge. Some families even toasted the bread in the frying pan alongside the dogs, soaking up their savory juices for extra flavor. For children, this sandwich was pure summer nostalgia. Bare feet in the grass, paper plates balanced on knees, and juice boxes sweating in the heat. It often appeared at impromptu neighborhood cookouts or after long afternoons at the public pool, when no one wanted to fuss with formal meals. Parents loved it for the same reason. It turned a humble package of hot dogs into a quick, satisfying lunch without any extra cost. Today, the hot dog sandwich still makes occasional appearances, especially among those who grew up eating it. Food blogs sometimes reintroduce it as retro budget cooking, while home cooks marvel at its unfussy genius. Even in an era of gourmet sausages and artisan brioche buns, there's something comforting about splitting a few dogs, frying them golden, and folding them into plain white bread. One bite, and you're back in the backyard, cicadas buzzing, mustard on your chin, and not a care in the world. It's proof that nostalgia tastes better than fancy toppings ever could, especially when memories season the meal. If this stroll down memory lane stirred up a craving or sparked a story of your own, share it in the comments. We love hearing the recipes and traditions you grew up with, the ones that deserve a comeback in modern kitchens. And if you enjoyed this trip through vintage sandwich history, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who might remember these flavors too, and subscribe for more forgotten classics from the heart of home cooking. Because sometimes the best recipes aren't new at all. They're the ones we've been carrying with us all along.